Joining us today is Geralyn St. Joseph. Of course, I got to start over again, right? I got a little thing that we're done. All right. Joining us today is Geralyn St. Joseph, a voice that echoes from the shadow-haunted streets of South Philadelphia to the spirit-charged shores of Hawaii, and now the quiet mysteries of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Geralyn is no stranger to the unseen. She's a guide through the esoteric, a bridge between the metaphysical and the biblical, unraveling the secrets of the universe with a perspective that's as unique as it is unsettling. Known for her bold explorations in empowerment and the human soul, she's not afraid to peer into the darker corners where demons lurk and ancient truths whisper. A writer, a speaker, and a host in her own right, Geralyn steps into our paranormal realm today to share with all of us. Geralyn, welcome to the Hellmouth.
Hello, thank you so much. That's an amazing introduction.
Well, there was a show, the Higher Side Chats.
Mm-hmm.
It was a podcast that talked about all this kind of stuff, but he would talk about like this kind of stuff, and then also get into like numerology, which I don't know about I don't know about you, but numerology is a weird one. Whereas people like 5, 6, 9, and these all like come together, and this means like the Antichrist is going to be here. I'm like, I don't know about that, dude. But every single person he had on, he had a great like intro, and I was like, man, I like that because it just hyped everybody up. It was good. It was positive, and I was like, I'll see what I can do with this stuff. So sit down, type out a little bit, and looked at your bio on Amazon and see what info would work. Gerald, you said your son wrote you down on our mailing list that said it'd be great to talk to you. So, and then when I reached out to you, there's something about demons and demonology, because typically with a show, I don't really get into stuff or like what we're going to talk about with people, because I like this to be like kind of natural, and we can just like go wherever the conversation ebbs and flows. So said that, and then I was like, demonology, it just reminds me of like John Dee and was it King Solomon and it's like Aleister Crowley, Constantine, stuff like that. So like, what is it that I saw your bio, like you go through a lot of things. So what really are like, you demonology is your like main focus? Like,
I don't have a main focus. I think basically because it changes over time. It's whatever spirit needs me to do, that's the direction I go in. So I've done everything from demonology to self-empowerment. I do a lot of stuff with relationships, helping people with relationships, and basically just about anything that's metaphysical. So I've been doing this since I was a little kid. So there's been a lot of time to try new things.
I've never thought about helping people with relationships within the metaphysical realm. Is it like, I understand that like when people have things bothering them or like things like get in between, it's like that, and it can manifest into like an energy, but I never thought about it as like something more than that. Or is that
what
kind
happens? What happens is each interaction we have with another person, even if it's an unspoken interaction, we're energy and their energy, and tiny energy cords will connect us. Now, usually that cord will just drop and be gone after a short period of time. Like if you're on the subway and you say hello to somebody, might make them feel really good for a little while, and then the cord drops afterwards because they forget about it. It wasn't something that was life-changing. But when you're in a romantic relationship or a familial relationship with somebody's family, then there are thicker, more powerful cords that are not as easy to get rid of. So when we leave a relationship, everybody's got that person that will not get out of their head. Even, especially if it was a bad relationship, it's like, I just keep thinking about them all the time. I don't know why. And it's because this cord is still attached. So it's still siphoning energy off of you. They're still feeding off of you in a way. And in order to really detach from that relationship and become fully healthy and be able to fully like realize who you're meant to be and who you're meant to be with, you need to disconnect those cords. They need to be pulled. And most people don't know that and don't think about that. So
no, I think that's actually like, I've never even thought about that. And I think that's like a cool, like just even a way to think of it, because I'm a very visual person. So like when you're saying the chords and having it attached to the person, like, and it kind of like still pulling you away in life, and like, so I think yeah, that's very
Yeah.
interesting. How do you help people with that? Is it more like just kind of like I assume it's like more of a kind of like a therapeutic kind of
Well,
thing,
there's
or
a ritual, and then I do relationship coaching because, and this is the same thing with when we talk about doing exorcisms and demonology and stuff, is people tend to get comfortable with feeling a certain way or feeling certain things. So then even after you remove that, they may have a moment of weakness and then go back to it because that's what they're used to. That's what's comfortable. It's not
yeah,
comfortable being healthy. It's not comfortable having all your energy because you're not used to it.
yeah,
So the person really needs to be devoted and have the intention that they want to be whole and that they want to move past this.
yeah. Well, I think when you let's say you sit at a desk all day and your body like doesn't move, full range of motion, and then like you get up and you're like, man, it's because you're putting yourself in a self-imposed cast. And
Mm-hmm.
so those muscles don't stretch. So I guess spiritually, it's kind of the same
It's the
where
same thing.
spiritual.
You
So
have to
how,
allow yourself to expand and learn what to do with your energy body too. I mean, there are people you're going to meet who have like a big energy. Like my kid has big energy from when they were a baby. We're talking 2 years old. If I'm in the living room talking to somebody and they're coming out of the bedroom, you would feel them in the room way
yeah.
before they came into the room. And my friends were all like, that is so creepy. It's so weird because I look up and they're not there yet. And then they come in.
Yeah. Think of like and I'm sure you've seen it, Donnie Darko
I
with,
love that movie. It's one of my
yeah.
favorite.
So
Yeah.
it has like the path of like their souls or whatever, like kind of going through, and then and people can see, well, they can see that, or maybe, yeah, he
Yeah.
could see it in the movie. It's been a
With
while
the
since I've seen it.
intention.
Yeah.
You see their intention. As soon as they make the intention, then the bubble comes out from their chest. That is so cool and so accurate.
So since you've been, how long have you been kind of helping people or like writing books?
Since grade school, I've been doing it further. I've been helping other people since I was in grade school. And I guess I was around somewhere between 8 and 10. I've been doing it professionally since 1994, where I started actually getting paid to help people.
Yeah, it takes a while to get into that. Like I used to draw pictures of Garfield and sell them for $0.25 on the playground, so I could get like an extra like chocolate milk at lunch and that kind of stuff. So then I'm like, oh wait, I can make money drawing. Like, all right, sick. So how did you in grade school? So how did you always just have like this feeling of people's like energies, or what's
Yeah,
your
I thought everybody was the same way.
yeah
Like it didn't dawn on me. Still, sometimes I forget. It's just like
yeah
when you're so used to being a certain way. Like my dad used to laugh at my mom because she would freak out because I'd be in my crib playing with this little ball of light and laughing and having a grand old time. And I'd be like, stop. And daddy just thought it was so cool, you know?
like a
And
physical one that's
like
people
they
can
could
see?
see it. They could see the ball of light because both my parents, I believe everybody in my family is sensitive.
Mm.
My mom actually taught me how to meditate and stuff when I was a little kid because she went through her spiritual phase. And then something scared her and she stopped doing everything. She just stopped. And whereas my dad, it was more like as I got into it, he would ask me questions about it and got really interested in it, but never, I don't think he ever fully I don't think he ever read the tarot or did anything like that. Whereas my mom did that kind of stuff instead of my grandmother. But my dad's family they seem very sensitive. So
Yeah, that's also very affirming in especially your young life. You're just like, yeah, this all exists. It's part of life, and that's what we all
yeah,
see, kind of deal. Whereas I might have had an encounter with spirit once in my life, and it was just recently. But I've gone to the most haunted places in New England. We take like haunted tours and like in the depths of like these old army base. Nothing, like you feel creepy about it, and you're like, well, I don't know what's going on. And one of my best friends, she's like, you want it too bad, so you're never going to see it. And I'm like, okay, so, there's enough of that skepticism in me. I want to see stuff. I want to be, but, I've
see, but
never get
then
to
you'll
see that.
explain it away. Whether you
Yeah.
see it or not, this is what most people do. You explain it away. I mean, I even have people that I've done like a full on exorcism for where like people are getting tossed around the room and stuff. And you encounter them a year or so later and they're like, It never happened.
Yeah.
So our brains really do protect us. Our egos protect us from things that we don't understand or that we might be afraid of.
Yeah.
See, I was never taught that way. My mom used to, in our home, I used to remember these big lumberjack looking guys like walking in front of the bedroom down the hall. And me and my older brother would be like, Mom, they're here. And my mother would say, they're not bothering you. Go to sleep. Like she never told us it wasn't there. It was always like, if you don't bother them, they're not going to bother you. So just be quiet and go to bed. So it's like, okay. So we never developed a fear of it or a belief that it didn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do believe, again, my 50-50, my Schrodinger's everything. And people that have like listened to my live shows and like other podcasts that I've done will be like, yeah, Josh, we've heard the same thing over and over. But I always think that it's like, when there's like a fish or like a small, it's like evolution has taught them that they only need to see like light and dark. They don't need to see out of the peripherals because that's what helps them survive. And super, super long story short, I got the hold of the remote viewing manual by the government. And,
wow.
Right. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn. And I'm like doing all this thing. And basically the whole thing just talks about how human beings are giant like radio receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Evolution has protected us by blocking that stuff out because all the information would make us go crazy. And it teaches you how to like open up a little bit. And I did all the exercises, and then I got to the chapter that says like, all right, now you need an experienced remote viewer. And I was like, well,
that's done.
That's it. Yeah. So I couldn't do that. So I do think there's something like that going on. Did you see the telepathy tapes or listen to the telepathy tapes podcast?
I have not yet. I just heard about them recently.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So it's on my list.
It's just talking about how verbal and semi-verbal autistic kids are exhibiting telepathy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating. And it gets wilder and wilder. So I'm not going to spoil anything, but like definitely go to it. But it plays into that whole like, hey, there's something here that we can tap into. We just don't know how. And
so we don't allow ourselves. The way I look at it is we're not allowing ourselves. So just like when you are in a haunted place and you're experiencing a ghost of some kind, most people are like, it's not there. And they will convince themselves it's not there, or, oh, it was just a breeze, or it was just this, or it was just that. I'm all about debunking if it's stuff that really isn't there, but I don't naysay it when I know that it is there because there's a different feeling to it. But if you don't learn how to discern between those feelings, then you're just going to poo-poo it and act like it didn't happen.
So was there a point, like I know you're saying like when you were a kid, you playing like balls of light, stuff like that. So it was always a part of your everyday life. Was there a point in your life where you're just like, oh, I'm different? And I don't know, like maybe I can like tap into something that other people can't.
My kid says I'm weird because I don't react to things the same as other people. So like something might happen where everybody's running and screaming and I'm just walking. Like there's nothing that's going to happen. Everything is fine. Like calm down. And everybody else like, and I'm like, it's fine. Nothing's
I'm like
happen.
that too. I'm pretty even. I'm like, everything's going to work out. It's
yeah.
fine,
And it's like, because I could feel it. Spirit didn't give me that push. I didn't get that urge. Gotta get out of the car right now. Now, there have been times where I have had that urge and the other people around me don't. And I will force somebody, I'm like, get moving. Something's about to happen. But I don't know. I think I can't remember a time. I mean, I've always felt like different, but I think that's more about the way I react to things and stuff like that than any kind of intuition or psychic abilities. Maybe when I really first started dealing with demons and possessions and stuff like that, I realized I was different because things would be happening around me, but it wouldn't touch me. And I thought that was like odd. I'm like, that's kind of cool, but I don't know why that's happening.
So I guess let's dive into that with so in 94 you started getting like did you start like working with people and helping them with their like kind of like metaphysical life, or is that when you started like with the whole demon? I don't know.
So what happened in 94 was there were several things. I was working at a movie theater. I used to run movie theaters, and I used to work in film and stuff like that. Love film. And I had a woman working for me who was a professional psychic. She worked for me part-time, and she did that part-time. And she was like, you're really good. You really need to be doing this and not giving it away for free because, I need to get paid.
Yeah.
So I started talking to her, and I did advertising and stuff. So I started advertising her teacher, who was a psychic, and I got her on the radio and stuff like that. So while that's happening, what is the best way to go about this? So while that's happening, and this woman really, really, really wants me to join her group, but I kept getting a no. And I'm like, I'll see. I don't think so. I'll see about taking a class or something, but I don't know. But she really, really, really wanted me to join her group. Meanwhile, a friend of mine's in college moves into this dorm, Catholic college, by the way, moves into this dorm, and weird stuff starts happening. And we're talking, like the light turns on or off by itself. The TV is changing channels. If they have the window open, all of a sudden they'll slam closed. They'll go to bed, and then when they wake up, all the lights are on, like different things like that, that are unnerving, but nothing that's like harmful. So she calls me and she's like, what is happening here? You need to figure this out. And I had this resistance. So I'm like, I really don't want to go there. But I asked about it, and I dreamt about the spirit that was there. Her name was Mary. She had committed suicide by accident. Her friend was supposed to come and stop her and didn't. And it was over a boy. And the boy was very mean to her and was very aggravated. Like when he came to me in the dream, he's like, And so after I got all that information, I went to the place and I was like, all right, this is what I feel is going on. I'm like, I have no idea what we're supposed to do with it because I haven't done anything at that point. I'm like, I collect gemstones. Like I play with rocks. Like, I don't know what we're supposed to do. Yeah. So we go, and all of a sudden I felt like I just wanted to sob. I just wanted to start crying. And you feel it right here in your third eye. Because usually if it's you and it's the emotion comes up from the chest, if you think about it, and it moves up. But when it's something that's trying to enter you, it comes in through here. So it's a different feeling. You'll feel pressure and it'll be sudden. All of a sudden you'll want to cry. All of a sudden you'll want to yell. All of a sudden you'll want to XYZ. So I felt like I wanted to cry, and I just said out loud, I am not going to cry. And immediately it left me, and it went to my friend. And she's like, oh my God, I just want to cry. I said, well, then cry like an idiot. And as soon as she started crying, she let it in. And so then Mary took over her body. And I don't think Mary knew what she was doing either. And she's like, all of a sudden, like things were weird. And we had, I think it was 3 days, it might have been 4 days, where we were going back and forth and talking to Mary. And I'm like a scientist at heart. I want to get as much information as possible. I want to know what's going on. What do you see? Why are you coming back now? Some of the interesting stuff was that Mary felt that she had been there for about 10 years. It was actually 70 because we could go back and find her. And she felt like she needed to tell her mother that she was sorry and that she didn't mean to do it because she saw how distraught her family was. It just tore her family apart after that happened. And her mother was dead already. Her mother had already crossed. So then it's like, well, okay, well, why are you here? If your mother crossed, why didn't she open up the portal and pull you up? Well, they can't. I don't know why they can't, but they can't. We have to open the portal from this side, or it has to be opening because of a death. So I found all that out with her.
That's where all that information came from about like the portal and be like, when somebody dies, that's when that opens. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Just figuring all that out. And I just sure, I would meditate. My primary guide is Archangel Gabriel. So I asked Gabe, all right, what's going on? What do I do with this? How do I handle this? And so I work with primarily Archangel Gabriel and with the Holy Spirit. So between the two of them, that's where I get all my information. That's where I've gotten the majority of my education. I've never really studied under somebody else or anything like that. So all this stuff is going on. And the reason why Mary was bugging these two girls, this was the room that she committed suicide in, but she was bugging them because the one girl looked familiar to her. And the girl in the other room looked familiar to her, looked like her friend who was supposed to save her and then didn't. So she had a lot of anger towards that other girl. And then the girl that she actually possessed, who was my friend, she felt like a kinship with her. So meanwhile, on the other side of things, I'm helping this other psychic who's supposed to be like this big, powerful lady. I'm getting her on the radio and doing all kinds of stuff. So when we're dealing with this, I'm going to her and asking her questions. So I said, of course, my first question is, Mary is terrified of crossing over because she committed suicide and she felt like she was going to go to hell, which honestly, I'd say probably 90% of all the ghosts that I've met are ghosts because they're afraid of going to hell and not for any other reason. They're afraid of what's on the other side. So they
makes sense
they
to me.
stuck.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I go to this one. I'm like, well, what happens? She's like, oh, well, she committed suicide. She's going to be in purgatory for 973 years. And 970, what the hell are you talking about? Like, that's so ridiculous. Where are you getting these numbers? How do you know these numbers? And they don't experience time the same way that we do. So whose time is it? Is it their time? Is it our time? Is it God's time? Like, what? I don't understand. So I was like, all right, all the information that she gave me, I just didn't feel was correct. So we did a meditation and we sat there and we had the girl who was possessed, the roommate, the two roommates on the other side of the hall who were involved, her boyfriend, and I think there's another boy there. It's mostly girls, and I think two guys. And we did a meditation, and I said, Spirit, can you let us know what is going to happen to Mary if she crosses over? What's going to happen? So none of us got anything except the girl who was possessed and Mary saw what they would see as Jesus, and then Jesus morphing into what we picture as God, like the old man, and felt all this love and kindness. So after we got done, and I said, oh, it's awesome that you saw that. I said, that means you're going to go to heaven. And she still didn't buy it. She was like, I don't know. Long story short, she drained one of the girls while they were doing a meditation. We all were doing the white light meditation. And they were alone in the apartments. And she drained the girl that she was angry at. And that girl slept for like 18 hours. And I was working. When I got off of work and I got that phone call, I went like raging. I'm like, oh no, Mary, now it's time to go. You gotta go because you're going to kill somebody. And no. So Spirit and Gabe showed me what I needed to do in order to create the portal and to help Mary go. And because she was resistant, she didn't just go. We had to help her. So I had to call in. I called in Michael and Gabriel, Raphael and Uriel, the four archangels. And Uriel is he's the stairs of gold that opens up heaven. He's basically the portal. Raphael heals whatever needs to be healed in order to give the person what they need to go. And Gabriel is the angel of courage, and Gabriel gives them the courage to cross over. And Michael's the muscle saying, you're doing this whether you want to or not. He's like the bouncer. Mm-hmm. So she got crossed over and she saw Mother Mary. I mean, she was Catholic from what I understand. And it was a beautiful thing. But while she had possessed my friend, we had a day where we were all standing there. We were in the other room. And all of a sudden the phone starts ringing. And my friend, like Mary in her, was like shoving me towards the other side of the room saying, don't answer the phone. Don't answer the phone. And I'm like, what are you doing? And then my friend like took back her body, was like, stop, Mary. Like I'm going to answer the phone. So she answers the phone and then scream, like lets out this screech, runs into me like and jumps in my arms. And this is somebody who's my size, who's the same size as me. And is like sobbing and crying and like, I told you not to answer the phone. I told you not to answer the phone. I said, what did you hear? What is going on? And she said, when I answered the phone, a demon said, I'll kill you.
Oh my God.
So we're like, the rest of us are like, we're in college. It's probably one of the boys playing a joke.
Yeah.
Like nobody took it serious. But then after Mary crossed over, she came back and she warned us again. She said, there is a demon that is going to try to kill you. You need to be prepared for this. I'm like, awesome. I have no idea what to do with that. And I can't go back to that other woman who I was consulting because she didn't give me any good information. Like everything she said was wrong. or I felt was wrong. And that was the first demon I ever had to deal with, that I knew I was dealing with, and that I knew I had to do something in order to protect myself and protect my family and my friends. So
there's a lot to this
that's
one.
my origin story.
But I feel like I'd be doing disservice to anybody listening if I didn't say, how'd you defend yourself? So what did you do? What was the next steps you had to take?
So what ended up happening was, now during all this, I guess one of the things you should know about me is that when I was 19, I was in a car accident. A drunk driver hit my car, driver's side to driver's side. My car was broken down. I was standing on the brakes. I was severely injured and I had brain damage from it. So even though at the time I didn't realize how bad it was, I couldn't work a regular job for too long because it would exhaust me. And then I would have to recover. So it was very difficult for me to work like normal hours or a normal job. So because of that, that's why I was working in the movie theaters, because it pushed me to be very physical. You're running up and down steps. You're picking up 50-pound bags of corn. And it forced my body to move through all these injuries that I had and to repair and get better and be able to be functional. I was still in pain, but at least I was functional. So because of that, that's why I was working in the theaters, and that's why I was doing things on the side, because I was moving out of working into theaters and moving into starting my own business as a marketing and advertising person. And that's where the psychic lady and all that comes in. So while I'm doing that, I'm working for somebody and they were looking for things to sell or something. And we saw something in the paper, like on the back page of the newspaper. And I called this woman, her name was Renee, and she owned a really cool little shop in Kensington, and she was Jamaican. And we ended up talking on the phone for like 2.5 hours. And we couldn't even work with each other because we didn't have the right stuff for each other, but it was like we became fast friends. And we talked on the phone, and then like 2 months later, when all this happens with Mary, after Mary comes back and tells us we need to defend ourselves, I'm like, well, I don't know what the hell to do. I get a call from Renee. And Renee says, the spirits are telling me you need to learn how to defend yourself. This is what you need to do. So she gave me like a lot of the ritual stuff. Like we had to get a black candle. We had to have what are they called? An iron nail from the railroad, like one of those big ones.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So iron's like really big when you're talking about protection stuff. I needed ruby, so I got raw ruby, which is really cool looking. And then I think I'm trying to remember what the rest of the stuff was, but those were the main things. And we had to like put it in water and put it in the full moon and like all that kind of stuff. So I do all this stuff. And the ruby I put in my car, and the ruby stayed in my car, known as the Integra. Very famous in my neighborhood. The ruby remained in my car until my car finally gave up. She was born in 1990 and she died in, I think it was 2018, which was very sad. But I still have my steering wheel. That's how crazy I am about this car. So she taught me how to do all this stuff. So I get together with my friend who was the one who had been possessed. And we're in her room where all that took place. I light the candle. We start saying the prayers. And then we're holding hands because it sounds like it's in between like a train coming at you and like a giant running towards you was the sound. And like everything's shaking. The windows are shaking. The windows are closed. And it comes in through the window and the curtains fly open, but the window's closed. So all this gust of energy that comes in is not wind. And I have my friend, and next thing I feel her slip out of my hand and she goes into the wall. And I feel this is what I got. I'm like, okay, I don't know why it happened that way. But what we did what was called a reversal. I sent it back, go eat your master. And I chose at the time, even though they weren't part of the instructions, like whenever I do anything, I always protect me and mine and those connected to me by positive cord or proximity, because I don't want anybody around me getting hurt because there's a spiritual battle going on. Well, the person who sent the demon, who was the woman that I had been working with,
Damn.
she did not do that. So even though she was okay, her husband almost died and her mother did die. That's how strong it was what she sent to me. So that was the first time. That was pretty major. It never came back. I didn't have a problem with that particular entity again. Needless to say, that lady left me alone after that.
How did you find out that, and why would she do that? I know you guys didn't have
She
like
did
everything.
it because she wanted me in her coven.
Was it like a test, or she was mad that you rejected?
No, she was mad that I wouldn't. She wanted me gone. If I was not going to be underneath her, I was not going to be beside her. Yeah, it was crazy. And I found out that one of the things that bothered me about the coven was that they would do things that really were manipulative to people. Like they did a thing where they were going to meet their soulmate and did not specify that the soulmate had to be, unattached or ready for a relationship or anything like that. So this one lady, she meets her soulmate and he's married to somebody else. So she's going to get him because he's supposed to be hers. And she became friends with his wife and then negatively charged gemstones and sewed them into a pillow and gave it to her as a gift.
Damn, yeah.
Yeah, right? And then she got sicker and sicker. And I don't know how they figured out what was going on, but they ended up getting rid of the pillow. I don't know that they ever really knew exactly why the wife was getting sick, but they knew that it started when this pillow entered the house and it stopped once the pillow was out of the house. So, like, knowing things like that, I was like, I am not going to be, like, connected with people like this. Like, I don't believe in anything is like, that has to be yours. That's part of you. And then you're stealing it from somebody else or you're hurting someone else in order to get it. I don't believe in doing that. I feel like there's enough in the universe that there's enough for everyone. Like, why would you do that?
Rising tide lifts all boats kind of deal, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird because the whole, feel like, in the ease of the satanic panic stuff. And then there was like the pendulum swing now where like covens are like this nice, like it's just like, oh, we're getting together and we're just like doing these nice magical workings and stuff like that. Yeah. But like, reading about like, let's say Crowley or just to throw a name out there, you kind of forget that there's bad actors in this space.
Yeah.
And that they do things like that. That's the first time I've heard of a bad actor within this kind of stuff and ever like talk to people for a decade about this kind of stuff. And
yeah, a lot of people, they don't like to talk about it because it makes us all look bad.
Yeah, I'm not a piece of shit.
Well, it's like the Amber Heard thing. Like she lied about being abused. She was abusive. It all came out. Oh, well, it's terrible for people who really are abused. It is because she lied, but that's no reason not to call her out for lying.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I wrote this thing too. So there's one thing that I do want to address.
Okay.
Because of, I'm on Reddit for good or for ill. Places of
it's the wild west of the internet.
But there's one subreddit and I don't remember what it's called. It's not past Saturn's ring. Something about reincarnation. Mm-hmm. And everybody on there is saying to not go into the light when you pass away because that is the reincarnation trap. So, and I was like,
I heard that that's a new thing.
Yeah, and I understand there's always going to be people butting against like what people you're like, oh, that kind of deal, and they're like, oh no, it's a trick, and all that kind of stuff. So, and then I've also spoken to she was a tarot medium, and she said that she didn't help people cross over because she felt like other people did it better than she could. Mm-hmm. But I asked, like, can we speak to somebody who has crossed over? And she's like, okay, I never have before, but let's try. And we talked to somebody who crossed over, and she said that they felt like they were punished, and that they were in hell. And she's like, I've never had anybody talk to me like this or anything like that. She's like, I should never have crossed over. So you just talking about like you get it, and I understand like when you talk about these entities, like I'm pretty sure you're not seeing like some big angel. It's just like a feeling that you're experienced with, and you're like, oh, I recognize this force or
Yeah. I
feeling as
mean,
this
there are
one.
people who can feel it, who can see it. And there are times when, like, Gabriel has shown himself to me and shown me what I look like to them,
Mm.
which was kind of cool. Like, he pulled me out of my physical body and showed me what my light body looked like. Like, that is neat.
Yeah.
So
Look like
I
what's
do
the
feel like they have different forms. And we have, like, this one guy that we have dealt with, one angel, and I believe it's a form of a Michael, big blue guy. And I was introduced to him from this 2-year-old that I had to work with, who the big blue guy came and told him that he was okay, that things were going to be all right, that he was safe. And the big blue guy is big, fuzzy, like he reminds me of like a big old grandpa, but really strong. Your big brother who's like a bear, who you can trust and kind of lean into, and soft and fuzzy. And I've had several people over the years who have described this same being to me, who ultimately gets called the big blue guy because he's like this amazing royal blue color. So they do, some of them have form where they can take form. A lot of times what I feel is that they will appear the way you expect them to appear. I have no need or want to see a ghost or what it looks like. I'm all right with just seeing what color it is and it flits around. And if I need to know what it looks like because somebody else is asking me, I get an image of it in my head. I don't see it with my eyes. It's different.
So with the the spirit realm, I've talked to people about it being like just a vast menagerie of like people, entities, things, and all this kind of stuff. Is your, I don't want to say version of it, but your experience of it painted more with the religious aspect with these saints? Or is it a corner, or do you just like, hey, this is a corner and there's still all these other like beings? Or
I feel like there's dimensions and there's layers, and some of the layers kind of overlap each other is the way I kind of experience it. And I feel like the layers get compressed sometimes, and then you could see more stuff. I was raised Catholic. However, I have studied a lot of different world religions and a lot of different religious texts. And I dealt with a lot of different, well, I'll say demigods, like Ganesh and Kali, Pele, even some of the Roman Greek gods. Like they'll come out. Some people like really are attuned to them. So basically what I do, and I do a lot with the Egyptian pantheon. That's where I kind of started, because that's very closely related to the Christian pantheon. You have the God who rose from the dead, who became human. You have the fight between good and evil. Horus. Well, and Horus was born of a virgin because his mother had sex with his father, but his father was dead. And it was through magic that he was conceived. So it was kind of the same. And what you see as like the Virgin Mary holding the baby, a lot of that iconography is from ancient Egypt and from the Isis cult, because it was exactly the same. They might have been dressed a little bit differently, but it was all the same kind of symbolism. So I think that's why I got really attached to the Egyptians in the beginning. I was always fascinated with that and with the Greek and Roman gods and that kind of thing. But so far as whatever you're working with, it's like whatever comes forward with that particular person. If I'm working with someone who's Hindu, then the Hindu gods may come up. If I'm working with someone who's a native Hawaiian, who's a shaman of that, then they'll come up. So to me, it's like they're all there together. And the way I see it is that God is everything. God is the energy that creates everything. And we are God experiencing itself. In order to do that, there's got to be, right now here on earth, we have duplicity. So we have where everything is, you have right and left, white and black, light and dark. You have all these different things so that it can discover itself. Because without the dark, then the light wouldn't mean anything. And without the light, then the dark wouldn't mean anything either. So they need each other in order for us to experience them, really.
Yeah, you need that contrast.
Yeah.
So, like, because I know that I don't think that there's one truth of, like, let's say the religious thing, like with all those like religious icons or like gods, stuff like that. Like, It's just our interpretations of something that might have existed or that we're close enough, but it's something for us to kind of understand what's happening within, like, however they intersected with our world. And we're like, oh, it's because born of a virgin. You're like, well, maybe on some plane of something else or something, whatever, that's how we can interact with it.
Yeah. Well, and like if you look at like the Muslim religion in Islam, I believe they have the 78 characteristics of God. So that would be kind of the same as like in Catholicism, you have the saints. And each of the saints is there to present a different, like, I guess, side of God or characteristic, a different way. Like this one is warrior, like this one is more like communicates with animals. This one is there to help you when you feel completely lost. This one is there to help you be well. This one is very maternal and that kind of thing. And if you look at all religions throughout time and throughout the world, that balance is there. Even if they say they believe in one God, it still has different aspects to it. So some religions see the different aspects as actually physically different, like different people or different entities, and others see it as simply a piece of that.
Whereas I had like a thought of like, since we have all these different either like beings, entities, versions of God, or like whatever makes up what's on these different dimensions, and we're all just big like, well, you know how I forget what maybe it was on like some like Discovery Channel thing where somebody was they were listening to like a field over like 20, and it just showed like, in the 70s or something like that, it had like this like wide spectrum of just like low level sounds all the way up to the birds and all this kind of stuff. And then like these 2000s, you just see like the sound or the vibrations of the entire place just like got like kept like was getting destroyed. Mm-hmm. So if you for whatever reason, but so if you think of beings or entities or whatever in another dimension, we're all part of this big like vibration or sound. I just want to know, I guess I'll never find out, right? But like, where does like the physical 3D realm like fit in to all this? Like, we have all these like entities that are like, oh, we're going to guide you through that. I'm like, well, why do they care? Why do they want to help? Like, I know we're experiencing it, but like, are we a central part of the universe experiencing itself, or are we just like a cog in the machine, or that whole like...
I feel like we're a part of it. The way I see it is that it's like, you could look at it either as a huge tapestry and we're just a thread, or you could look at it as like a huge jigsaw puzzle and every piece is important, but it's important because of its uniqueness. So that's kind of the way I see the world. I feel like, well, one of the theories that I heard that I think is really interesting is that as we move through our lifetimes or we move through dimensions and we make different decisions, that we become these other entities. Mm-hmm. Eventually we level up into like just energetic or back into the energetic. And then that's why we want to help other people get through it more easily or more fluidly.
Like a seed growing into another part of the, or into the plant, or,
Exactly. Yeah.
So where do you see yourself fitting into this, being like a bridge between these realms? Where do you think you fit in with all this? Like, what are you? Is it like a purpose that was like you're like, hey, I'm here for X, or I'm just kind of like, hey, I have a unique position. I'm just gonna see what I can do and how I can help.
No, I guess I feel more like, I feel like I get placed into people's lives to help them through really difficult times, because that tends to be when I show up. Like, I've had several friends who have died, and I tend to show up within the year before when everybody else is leaving because somebody's sick. That's generally when I end up meeting them or end up getting close to them.
Bummer.
And it helps them, and I help them to cross over. I found I actually thought about being a death doula for a minute, because I seem to be called on quite often to help people be calm and have a peaceful transition. And back to I'm kind of interested in the theory that the white light is a trap somehow. So I've heard that theory also. I don't buy into that. I think because I remember being on the other side. I have memories of being a ghost. I have good recall of a lot of my different lifetimes. I always remember, I mean, a lot of times I'll remember how I die, which is very traumatic. And that's usually the stuff that people forget.
Mhm.
So, and I feel like maybe the reason why I was given that was to help people see that even though you're going through that at that moment, it's only a moment. It's just a drop in the ocean. It's not going to mean anything in the long run. It's just a way to transition.
Yeah, it's just turning of the page.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And I mean, my child came to me before they were born. The first time I kissed their father, I dreamt of him. And I was like, oh no, this is not the guy I want to have a kid with.
was it like a baby that's just like, oh, I'm gonna cut, or was it like kind of like how you know of them later in life?
It was the first dream that I had when the first time I kissed his dad was I dreamt of the baby being a baby and then into probably about, I want to say 5 or 6 years old, like where they were walking and talking and I could see what they looked like and what the personality was like. Then when I was at our apartment one time, I was working, I was doing the psychic lines. I did that for a minute. I'm laying down and in my ear, I could hear two little girls just giggling and laughing. And the one said in my ear, Mommy, we decided I'm going to come first. I'm like, no, now is not the time. This is not a good time. And they just laughed. And I was not supposed to be able to have children. So that was another point of it. It was like, am I going to die if I get pregnant? Am I going to be able to carry to term? Is the baby going to be able to survive? And like all this other stuff. But then I had dreams about the baby as they got older and I could see, where they were going and what they were doing. So that finally calmed down. But I also had to make the decision that I was okay, that if it turned out that I needed to go in order to bring this new life into the world, I was more than willing to do that. And that I was willing to also love and cherish that child, even if that child was not going to be with me for very long. So
That's a kind of like a hard thing to come to terms with. But I feel like after that, you're just like, is whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen kind of
yeah, and
deal.
and what I did was I just enjoyed every single day. It was like every morning was like Christmas morning. Not that I like Christmas. I don't like Christmas, but the
But
way most
we
people
all
look
know
at
what that
Christmas,
evokes. We get
that
that.
like,
Yeah.
ooh, excitement. Every morning was like that to get to see my child. Like I couldn't wait to wake up. I hated to go to bed at night because I just wanted to hold them and experience them and talk to them and do things with them. And we traveled all over the United States a couple of times. We lived in Hawaii for 10 years. We have had a good life together. So
Right.
I'm very blessed.
So are they no longer with us?
Well, he's 27.
Okay. I didn't know if there was another
And well, there
one.
was a transition that happened
Gotcha.
along the way where things got swapped a little bit, but it's still one of my children. So it was, it's a good thing. It's confusing. I'm not going
Yeah.
to talk about that.
Yeah. Don't even worry about that. That's fine. So if you can, so you remember your past lives,
Mm-hmm.
about how many do you think you might have, or how many have you gone through that you are aware of? Does it get like
The
as you go back? Does it get fuzzy and you're just like, kind of don't know, or do you like know, like, I started here and this is where I am on my travels?
I remember coming to the planet.
Okay,
I remember being in
please
a
tell me
ship.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember being in a ship, and we had been on the ship probably for years, and we were couples. I think there were 20 couples, and I was a female. I had a male with me, and I remember coming around the moon and seeing Earth for the first time. And we all went to the observatory where it was just all like clear around us, like underneath us was clear, above us was clear. It was really wild. Coming around the moon and seeing the Earth for the first time, just lit up by the sun. It was the most beautiful thing. It was so breathtaking. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Feeling my counterparts hands on my shoulders and like hugging me, and like we were all so excited.
Mhm.
And then going down to the Earth's surface and feeling the sun for the first time, and the way it smelled and all the sounds and everything was amazing. And we were there to seed the planet. And what happened to me in that lifetime is that I died before I could have a baby. So I totally screwed up my mission. Like I didn't have any kids. So my lineage ended there on the planet.
Your physical lineage.
My physical lineage, yeah. But my energetic was still there. And then I've had that happen to me in so many lifetimes where I don't get to have any kind of a like progeny. Like even like my kid now, my kid can't have children. So he's it. My lineage is done. It's just me.
Yeah. But it's not as I guess with like I said, with the spiritual energetic, you're like, well, we're going again,
Yeah.
No
and
big
the
deal.
thing is, he and I and his father have tumbled through time and had all these different lifetimes together. But he and I, especially like the time when I was a ghost, when I recall being a ghost, which is why I think I'm here to cross ghosts over and help ghosts so much.
You've had that experience. You remember that experience.
Is because I remember that experience. I committed suicide. I shot myself. And I remember I was so overwhelmed because I had an older child who had been murdered very viciously. She was only 14. And this was, I don't remember whether it was her birthday or it was a year later, but I could not get over it. It affected me. And her father was so angry with me because we had a younger child who was my child in this lifetime. So she was a little girl in that lifetime. And he was so angry with me. And I couldn't take it anymore. And I committed suicide. And I remember being in the room, sitting on the bed, and what the bed felt like. It was my child's room. We didn't change anything for the year. And the bullet exited the back of my head and hit this window behind me, and the window shattering. And then seeing the bed coming towards my face and thinking, I'm not dead. This is going to be bad. Like, he's going to be really mad at me now. And feeling the back of my head and there really not being anything there. And then having my hand over the maid's hand as she's trying to wipe away the blood. So I'm trying to help her clean the blood. And then my husband and my child came home and they were downstairs and all the women were like, don't go upstairs. And he knew what had happened. And my baby was, whether she was like 4 or 5, she was little. And she said, I want to see mommy. And Daddy's like, well, you're not going to see mommy anymore. And then I came walking down the steps and my kid was like, mommy's right there. What are you talking about? So I stayed with her in that lifetime as a ghost, like kind of watching out for her and whatever I could do as a ghost, because ghosts are very limited. And then when she died, when she was on her deathbed as an old woman and the portal opened, she grabbed me and pulled me up with her. And that's how I crossed over in that lifetime. Yeah.
There's a lot of intensity in that story. Is that in one of your books that you have?
I don't think I have it written anywhere. I do need to I started writing like a memoir of all the stuff that I remember and stuff, but it gets so intense that I get like, I can't keep doing this.
All the stuff is, so it's all incredibly interesting. So I'm just going to circle back because I've got I was like, I write these 2 questions down real quick. So if you remember being in a spaceship coming to Earth to seed the planet, do you remember what was before that, like loading onto the ship, where you came from before, or was that kind of like your awakening of like, okay, I'm me, and like, oh, we're here, it's my purpose, or do you know like what happened before that at all?
I don't. I do have recollections of the in-between, but I don't know that I have a recollection of like boarding the ship. Or like where in that lifetime, what planet we started on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I don't know like if it's like this long spiritual lineage, if you could go before Earth, if like what happened before then, kind of deal.
I'm sure if we tried to investigate, we could.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could get there. And the way I usually, so there's 2 ways that I've done this. 3 ways. The first is to ask a question, then go into meditation and see what I'm given. The second is to ask a question before I go to bed, and then usually I will dream whatever it is. I'll be back in there. And the third is to do a past life past life regression. Because I've done past life retrievals for people too, or soul retrievals. But the past life regression that my friend did was wild. It was trying to remember. I think it was, I always say BC is before my kid, before my child. And I think it was before I had them. And I was under for a long time, and there was a lot of energy, and I saw these different beings. I lit up a 45-watt light bulb in my hand. I started to float, like all kinds of crazy stuff happened. Yeah. My poor friend didn't have a voice for like 2 weeks afterwards. So I just like, I gained all kinds of information then. I think then I saw like, and I don't know that there is a beginning. I feel like time is kind of like these waves that are on top of one another. So it's almost like everything is happening at the same time, kind of. And that's why we could jump in and out of different timelines and different memories.
And my next question kind of goes along with that. Since, you know, spirit realm, spiritual world isn't linear. Mm-hmm. Do you have any like either like insight into like what a future life might be, or later on along the timeline? Have you experienced, because the past, like, it's easy to understand what a past life is, right? But like a future life, that would be like a harder thing to kind of like cobble together. Is there anything like that come to you like that?
I think one of the things that we do is, like in this lifetime, we'll look to see, that's basically what a psychic reading is I'm looking at your energetic and I'm seeing which way is it flowing and which way is it most likely to flow. That's what you get in a psychic reading. And I can go from there and be like, all right, if you make this decision, then this branch takes off, and what happens in that way. If you make this decision, this branch takes off, and what happens in that way. So far as future lifetimes, I think it's probably possible, because I know Edgar Cayce did it. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that I'm going to continue to be human. Mm-hmm. I think I might be done with this particular stage, so to speak.
Well, it sounds like, you know, the whole like learning lessons with every lifetime and like becoming more spiritual. To the layman, it sounds like you're pretty far up there, you know? Yeah, that's all pretty intense.
Yeah, it gets very intense. That's a good word.
Yeah, I probably said it like 40 times during this whole thing. So if we want to go back, like I'm just going back to like the things that you talked about. I'm like, don't forget about this, because this is really cool. When you said like you lived your life as a ghost and you kind of helped your daughter, and when I've talked to other people that like are like, you know, involved with like the spirit realm and all this kind of stuff, I remember trying to talk to somebody like, we never hear about spirits that are like, you know, the year 800 or 500 or so. Like, it's always like kind of within like 200-300 years. So I tried to talk to a medium, like, oh, maybe there's like a life cycle on the closest spirit realm of the ones that we talk to. So like, can we try to talk to somebody about and figure out like what their day-to-day kind of life as a spirit is, even though time isn't the same, you know, kind of deal. So like living as an entity, do you recall that, or is it all just kind of snippets of like things with your daughter, or do you remember just being like, cool, I'm here, I can't touch anything?
Yeah, well, it was like my daughter was my only friend.
Yeah.
I was a real loser. So one of the things that I remember from that was coming down the steps, seeing my daughter, going into the kitchen, and still not realizing that I was dead. The one thing with ghosts is a lot of times they don't acknowledge that they're dead, or they don't even know. If you remember The Sixth Sense, perfect rendition, exactly the way it is. So I go into the kitchen and we have these doors that are like the barn. I guess they're like barn doors where the top comes, you could open the top or the bottom or both. And I hear this banging on the door, and I open the top and I see this gentleman in front of me, and he's frozen, like, and he's in a gray war suit. So it had to be like around Civil War. And I know we were down south. I think we were in Louisiana, and I'm looking at him and I'm like, he's frozen, but it's like July. And I go to open the door for him, and he's like, please, can I get warm? And I'm like, sure. And I sit him by the fire where we're cooking, and I'm like, oh my God, you're dead. Oh my God, I'm dead. I must be dead. And then I realized that I was a ghost.
It all kind of just flooded.
Yeah, it all just kind of like, yeah. And then like the day to day was just a lot of times what they do is they kind of go to sleep where they're not really aware of stuff around them. They kind of dissipate.
Because you need to draw energy or something, like, I figured
Well,
like
in order
that's part of it.
to be, for someone to be able to see them, they need to draw energy, but also it's like, well, you got to be bored to death. Like, what are you doing? You're watching people TV, talk about people watching,
Yes.
and I just remember doing things like to warn my daughter if I saw something, or because they only can see as far as we can see, but they can walk through walls. So it's kind of like that. And like I would overhear somebody planning to do something. I'd be like, you better get out of here because this person's going to steal from you, or different things like that. And she never lost her ability to connect with me. She never gave that up.
So I wonder if that's kind of what intuition might be. Was like other, being like, hey, get out of here, like there's people in this truck, you should probably book it, kind of deal. You know? I guess it kind of circles back to what you were saying about explaining away the spirit realm, or like the clues from that with like, you every day like, oh, it's that weird feel. It is no big deal,
Yeah. I remember writing something when I was in high school. One of our neighbors had been murdered, and it happened like 3:00 in the morning. So we had gone to school and didn't know what had happened. And then when I was coming home, like all day at school, I just felt sick to my stomach. I knew something really bad had happened. I didn't know what. Nobody had brought it to my attention. And so I wrote about it, and I wrote about how I felt all day. And I had this really queasy feeling as I was walking up to the house where they lived. They were murdered on the corner, but they lived like a couple doors down from me. My teacher's like, well, but what gave you that feeling? I'm like, what do you mean what gave me that feeling? So you ever just feel things?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, we got to explain. I'm like, yeah, they explain it. I feel things. I said, I knew something was wrong. I can feel it. So when you were saying about how we figure out that we're different, like I had no idea that other people didn't just feel that, like when the shuttle blew up, I was in school and I just almost threw up. I just got hit with this intense, overwhelming feeling. I felt like I was going to faint. And then they told us what was going on. So like a lot of times when there's big things like that happen, I will get a sense of it either as it's happening or right before it happens.
Yeah, like a corporeal.
Yeah, everything. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, so you got a ton of cool stories. This is awesome. So what do you do like now? Like now you've been in the thick you've been in the thick of this for so long. What do you do? Like you're professionally help people through their like spiritual lives, or what do you do?
Yeah, basically I'm on YouTube at Geralyn St. Joseph. And I do a podcast also, although I'm not consistent with it.
It's not easy.
Yeah. When spirit is giving me information, a lot of times I'll get a push that I need to share it. This needs to be shared. And when there is a network of us who are all around the globe who call each other and we're like, are you getting this? Are you getting that? Is this going to happen? What do you feel about this? And then we each feel into it wherever we are, which is kind of cool. But I do readings. That's my full-time job basically is doing readings for people, doing clearings. I do healings. I teach people about their psychic senses and about their spiritual selves. And I try to help them and support them in really lifting their vibration and becoming whoever they're meant to be, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Like a spiritual life coach, but not life,
Yeah. I'm a relationship empowerment coach is what I call it. I like doing the empowerment stuff because I feel like when we're truly empowered, we're utilizing all of us. And the way I got to that was I have a book called Completing the Circle, and I have a class called Completing the Circle, where I take you through the steps of what happened to me from one of the darkest periods of my life and how I came out of that and how I came to know myself better and really be in touch with my spiritual side. So it's these different lessons that you go through and I walk you through it. And there's different meditations and different things that we do where you can practice and help yourself grow in that way.
Yeah, because I really like, I don't know if it's weird or not, but I like it with seeing people succeed. And so, like, whenever I'm like, oh, the person, I'm like, oh, that's great. This is great and all this stuff. So if you're helping people kind of like succeed in that, like, oh, like, since I'm a tattoo artist, right? I used to be a freelance artist a very long time ago, 10, 15 years ago. But I send people a piece of art. 3 weeks, I get an email, thanks, they pay me, that's it. And you're like, okay, cool. But with tattooing, it's so much more than just like having a piece of art that you put on somebody. I think it's cool. Like, there's a transfer of energy. We're there, we're talking. And when that person, even if it's like a couple lines or it could be some crazy sleeve, that person is so pumped. I'm like, yep, this is what I do it for, because I just like seeing that person be so like happy and like full of confidence and like the stuff. So I could see on your side of things that being a driving factor as well.
Yeah.
And having these talents, like, there's not a lot of people that can do what you do. So being able to do that, I think that's really cool.
I have one more story for you.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we don't have to get off until you're ready, but
yeah.
So when I first started this years ago, it was probably still in the 90s. I had this client come to me. She was this big corporate bigwig, and she was trying to make a decision and all stressed out. And I'm like, look, in the next 6 weeks, something is going to happen that is going to change your life. I said, when it happens, you're going to think it's the worst thing in the world that could possibly happen to you. You're going to want to die. But on the other side of that, you're going to find real happiness and real success. And it's going to be completely different than what everything looks like right now. She's like, well, what is it? I said, I don't know, but I know that it's going to be very traumatic and it's going to take you a long time to get through it. But just keep your eye on the prize and know that once you get past it, your whole life is going to be different. It's going to be so much better and you're going to be so happy. So she's like, okay. 6 weeks later, she got into this car accident. She almost died. She was in the hospital for over a year. And she said when she was first in the hospital and she first became conscious and everything again, all she wanted to do was die. And all she heard me saying was, keep your eye on the prize. You're going towards something so much better. And when she came back to me, it was like 3 or 4 years later, she was this amazing artist. And she had discovered the corporate world was killing her. You know, she was just stressed all the time. She really didn't have any happiness in it, but she was very successful. But for her, it wasn't successful because she wasn't happy. So that's the kind of stuff that really, to me, that makes such a difference in somebody's life. Like, if she had not spoken to me or spoken to someone who had given her that positive feedback that, yeah, this is going to be horrible, but once you come out of it, man, you are going to be stellar.
She might have given up.
Yeah. Yeah. And how much worse would it have been trying to get through it too? Mm-hmm. So did you know that Abraham Lincoln had a psychic reading and was told he was going to be the president and had not even thought of that?
I thought for a second, I was like, I thought he had a spiritual advisor or something like that. But then I did not know that. Yeah.
Yes. And that's what put it in his head that he was supposed to be president.
Yeah. Because he was extremely religious. And I remembered like reading or seeing clips of his speeches. I was like, Jesus, dude, like pump the brakes a little bit. But, but like, I guess if he thought he was either preordained or something like that for that, you'd be like, kind of be like that, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So with helping all these people and seeing like if you can, because we talked about like the demonology kind of stuff, and that's like kind of like the salacious part of all this stuff, and you're like, all right, what do we got kind of deal. So how do you recognize, aside from something that is like insanely obvious, like your friend with Mary back in college, if it was back in college, I think I was when you were telling that story, I was thinking of like my college dorm and like putting it all together like that, right? But so how do you recognize when somebody needs to like expel that, or they've got something attached, or is it just kind of like you kind of poke and prod and see that, or is there something that's like very obvious?
It depends on what it is. So if it's a person, if it's a ghost, and then that's a possession, that's not an exorcism that you have to do. It's less work. It's less harmful.
So
let's
define that, like a possession, right?
So a possession is, so first we'll define ghost. A ghost is a person who has not crossed over. When you're a ghost, you can only see as far as your nose. Like you can hear things like you're a fly on the wall because people can't see you, but you can't see the future. You're not looking down on several people. You are in one location. You have one energetic body, and you can only do as much as you did as a person, you know. Whereas when you're a spirit, once you cross over, then you can multi-locate. You can watch out for all your grandkids at the same time. It's not like you have to be only with one or the other. Your consciousness expands because then you become part of the all that is, part of the Godhead again. So you have all this expansion. You could see the future. You could help pull energies and stuff like that. There's a lot of different things you could do, but you cannot open a portal to save somebody who's stuck on Earth. You don't know why. So if a ghost is hanging out somewhere and somebody comes that they kind of resonate with, they're going to try to talk to them. And some people are going to talk back and be like, okay. And other people are just going to feel the emotion because we all are very, like, mammals are empathic. So we're more energetically empathic and we're going to feel that. And then we're going to think it's us because we're not putting it outside of ourselves if we don't have discernment. And then once we start really expressing the emotion, you're allowing that ghost to take over your body, your physical body. The easiest way for them to get in is if you're drinking or doing illicit drugs. Two easiest ways.
Is it because it like breaks a barrier or something like that?
Yeah, actually, it starts to move your soul outside of your body. You know, when you're drinking and you start to feel buzzed and you feel like your eyes are like here?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's what that is. That's that disconnect, and it's creating a space for something else to come in. So like in bars and clubs and stuff like that, there's always a lot of negative stuff hanging around trying to make you make an ass out of yourself. And the more broken your aura is, the more that you drink, the more likely it is that you'll get that kind of an attachment. Now, usually it'll pop back out when you're conscious, but sometimes they don't pop all the way back out. They'll be on top of you. You need to drink, you need to drink, you need to drink, because they like feeling physical. That's the whole idea of it. But if it's a ghost, so it's just another person. So if that person, like with Mary, for instance, she was taller than my friend. She was bigger than my friend. So my friend was like feeling like this because she didn't quite fit in the body, right? So she was a little more awkward in the way she moved. Her speech changed. The tone of voice changed. Around the eyes changes a lot of times. So with the eyes, I actually had a client whose eyes went from brown to green because whatever was in them, you know, the eyes turned to green. That was wild. Yeah. That doesn't happen very often, but that was crazy. Yeah. So a lot of times around the eyes, you could see it. So people who really know you will sense the difference and see the difference. You may feel like you're not yourself. A lot of times people like it because then they start feeling, and this is especially true with demonic possession, they start feeling stronger. They start feeling indestructible. They feel like they get more impulsive. And they'll stand up for themselves more, and they'll do things that they wouldn't normally do, which sounds great, but it's not necessarily great if you're not really in control of what you're doing, if you're just being explosive and whatnot.
Yeah, it doesn't fit into the life plan.
Yes. So that's what I would look for. I would look for around the eyes, somebody who's awkward in their body. And it's best coming from people who know them because they'll know that something's off. They may not be able to tell you exactly what, but they'll know that something is off. Or the other thing too is you might start talking in the accent of whatever the spirit was, or using verbiage that the spirit used. So like if you're down south and you're actually from up north, all of a sudden you'll start saying things differently and start using colloquialisms and things like that. And people are like, what are you doing? You're from the Bronx, you know, like you sound like a Southern Belle. What's happening here?
Is a possession just as basic as like a spirit just wants to inhabit a body or like feel physical or something like that? And then, so it's possession, but like a demonic, is it a possession, a demonic possession? Is that the same terminology?
Demonic possession is different than a regular possession. So possession by a ghost is just a person. They're pretty easy to push out. They're pretty easy to just push out. You suck them up, and they're gone. They're done. That's usually doesn't take too long. Even if they're fighting you, it doesn't take terribly long, because most ghosts are not very strong because they're not trained in spiritual ways. Now, if they're trained and they were spiritual when they were a person, and maybe they were a shaman or something, then you might have more difficulty with it. But for the most part, ghosts aren't hard to dismiss. Demonic entity, though, so demonic was never human. So it could fit into whatever you are. It just like forms itself into you because it's just energy. The demonic, a lot of times you'll see, I mean, I've seen eyes actually go black. You know how in the movies they blink and their entire eyeball is black?
Yeah.
That is real. That happens. Now that's really serious. If that's happening, you better get an exorcist quick, because that's not good. That is like full on. Sometimes they pop in and out. Sometimes they could just take a part of the body. So I've seen them just like pop into like an arm to do something, like you're driving and all of a sudden your one arm will yank and almost get you into an accident or something. It's like, what the hell is going on? Or all of a sudden you're on the gas and you can't move your foot, like that kind of thing. They'll try that kind of stuff too. So they're sneaky little bastards.
Yeah. So I know that they're just like another entity that exists in this realm that were never people. You know, you think of like gremlins or like whatever other, not like the traditional gremlin, but like a little things like, oh, I can do this because I want to kind of deal.
Yeah.
And that's what, okay. I didn't know if there was also, because like, you know, you think of like the religious aspect of it too, like maybe there's like a bigger part that some of them play.
Well,
there's
a big hierarchy of them, just like the angels have their hierarchy. Mm-hmm. Demonics do also, and there's all different kinds. Like you have the most common kind are like little wasps. They just kind of keep bugging you and stinging you and putting thoughts in your head that are negative and make you agitated. And then you have like, there's swarms sometimes that'll be in a house that when you enter the house, you just feel angry or agitated or afraid or like something's there. And then it steps up to where some of them will get really physical. You know, you'll have the scratches. And it's always like the 3 or the 4 that's demonic scratches, and it'll burn when they scratch. And they will physically try to harm you because they feed off of fear. The things with demonics is that they all feed off of what we would consider negative emotions. When you talk about the 7 deadly sins, that's what they feed off of. And they're all different types of demonics that feed off of these different things. So not everything feeds off of fear. Maybe they feed off of gluttony. There are other ones that feed off of anger. There are other ones that feed off of lust. Lust is real popular. There's a lot of those around. So, and pride and things like that. So when we talk about pride, we're not talking about you're proud of your accomplishments. We're talking about somebody who has pride that's not deserved, you know, and that seems oftentimes to be triggered by demonics, and they're everywhere. I used to say like, oh, it's so uncommon. And then I started writing down how many exorcisms I've done of places, people, and things. And I'm like, oh my God, there's a lot. There's a lot more than I thought.
Yeah.
But they'll be in places too where negative things have happened, like battlefields. You know, sometimes they'll be in cemeteries and stuff like that, just feeding on all the sorrow.
Yeah, that's left over
from all the angst. Yeah. So there are different places where you could go, and there's a lot of them. And if you're not careful, you could pick one up and there'll be, you know, a monkey on your back going home with you like a backpack. Yeah. And you don't want that. So anytime you're doing any kind of spiritual work, I always tell people you could pray, like the Our Father or something like that. You could do the white light meditation where you're pulling in white light and you're just making your energy so big that nothing is going to encompass you. One of my favorite things is rose water. It's so simple. And you just spritz rose water, and it's one of the highest vibrations on one of the highest vibrations on the planet right now. And it will, if there's something that's on you, or if you're picking up from somebody else, you spritz yourself with rose water, you'll immediately feel relief. And then it might come back, but then at least you know it's coming from outside.
Yeah. My fiance will be happy to know that, because whenever we go anywhere, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to this haunted place. She's like, just don't bring anything back. I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. Nothing's going to happen. So I've actually talked to people about that. I mean, like, you're more experienced with this. How do you deal with that? And like, oh, my house is very haunted. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But they just basically told me they're just like, you just ask them to leave, because most of the time it's not a demon, but maybe a ghost or something like that. And they're just, oh, you can hear me? You can see me? So they're around, and you're just like, hey, leave me alone. And they're like, okay.
Well, I don't think I have anything, but August Spurstone, Peridot.
I have no clue what you just said. What is it? Okay, the birthstone. Okay,
the birthstone, Peridot or Peridot or Olivine. It's all the same frequency. So that stone, if you bless it and charge it, you could use that for protection. So like if I'm going to go do an exorcism, I'm going to have my Peridot on my way there. Then I leave it in my car because I'm invisible as long as I have it on. They can't see me.
Okay.
And then I leave it in my car, and then I go in, I do my job. Then when I go back to my car, I put my Peridot back in and it just washes everything off of me. Doing stuff like that, like knowing, I don't know what that was.
Yeah, what that was. Yeah. I heard it too. Yeah.
Doing things like that can be like little cheats so that you have it with you helps also. Using amethyst and ametrine, which is amethyst and citrine together. These two can grow together. And when they do, it's really, really powerful. I had one that was like a beautiful wand, and I was basically helping this woman who we ended up doing a full-blown exorcism on ultimately. But I gave her the wand, and it just exploded. So I have like this much of it left. The rest of it is gone. But that's how much negativity she had in her, that it just completely overpowered the crystal. And that can happen too, unfortunately. So be careful who you hand your crystals to.
Well, I'll be very careful.
Yeah.
How many exorcisms do you think you've done?
I want to say the first number that comes to my head is about 50.
Damn. Yeah, that's a well-storied exorcist career. Right there. That's
and I don't have to be in the room. I don't have to be with the person. I've done exorcisms like in Australia, not Ukraine. Is it Hungary? But over in that area, I've done there, and different places where I was at a distance. I've done them being on the phone with the person, or having a phone where they can hear my voice. And I've also done them without having to be on the phone, because they can get into electrical stuff really good and mess things up. So
when you're doing the ones that are like when you're not there, I mean, I'm sure it's extremely different, but like how different do you have to like fine tune like your connection to that person, or so? Like how do you like
you kind of go into it's the same as doing a reading. Like I do the majority of my readings, it's distance. So I'm very used to that. I'm very familiar with it. So what you do is you focus on the person and you suss out whatever the entity is. And you want to focus on the entity to be able to separate them. Yeah, there you go. I saw that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Also, we've been talking. I feel like there's something standing beside me too. And I'm like, shit, I'm getting freaked out right now.
Get your rose water. Yeah. Get your rose water.
For the people that's going to hear this audio, like my, the screen just flashed, and then we heard some weird noises earlier. So who knows?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you're like tuning in. You're getting those people like figuring out what it is. And separate it. Yeah.
I think when you're talking about like an actual exorcism, I think it's easier if you have the person in front of you, because like I will manhandle the person a lot of times. Like I'll have to like grab them and make them look in my eyes, because they don't want to look in my eyes, and then call their soul up front, like, and push the demon back so that I can then prep the soul to fight it with me and push it out. And a lot of that is about reminding the soul that it's light and that it's loved. And there are people here that love it, and that the demon has been lying to it, and that you can't believe anything that it said, and So those kind of things it can be very physical. It can be very physical. I mean, I've seen people with getting choked, like you see the finger marks around their throats, or they get lifted up out of their seat, or they get thrown into the wall and stuff like that. I'm very blessed that they don't seem to do that to me. They don't happen around me. But that's also one of the reasons why, like when you create the circle, you have to hold on, and they will go after whoever the weakest person is in the circle. And then all of us have to focus our energy on that person to repel it. And what I usually do is I have a blessed cauldron of water in the center that has rose water in it, and we'll just slap it with the rose water, and then it's off like that. Like, like when you see in the movies that they're like, with the holy water.
Yeah.
Rose water is like holy water pumped, because you do bless it. Okay. And then it's rose water on top of that. So it's really powerful.
Yeah, the stuff. I try to ask people, like, when I know, like, when we first started talking about this, when we first started talking, like, when, like, I talked to ghost hunters, and they said, like, oh, like, a little girl spirit held my hand, and that's when I knew this stuff was real. And I was like, how did you feel when that happened? Because then all of a sudden, I just try to think of it like, then all of a sudden you're on, like, the edge of a cliff, and, like, the camera pans back, and you're like, oh my God. So I know that you've always been in this kind of space, but do you get that feeling every once in a while? Like, oh, geez, this is, like, bigger than I thought. This is crazier than I thought. Or is it just like this whole thing has just been so immense that you're kind of like, well, I kind of know my place in this whole thing?
My mother always told me, don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Which is the best advice ever. So she always said, don't ever imagine that you know everything about anything. So that's kind of the way I go into it. I go into every situation as a learning tool. I know what I'm doing to a certain amount. I always have guidance from Gabriel and from the Holy Spirit. And then sometimes there's new tools in the toolbox. Sometimes it's something that's completely different. I'm trying to think of a time. One of the other things that's different is if you're dealing with a fallen angel versus a demon. Demons are easy compared to fallen angels. Fallen angels are really, really difficult because they still have the same vibration, like they saw the same kind of a frequency as a regular angel. So they're very hard to suss out until you see a pattern. So a lot of people think they're talking to like Archangel Michael or something. Like everybody's into Michael. Yeah. I believe Michael is a type of angel. Like that's not necessarily like there's one Michael. There are countless Michaels, and that is what they are. They're the heavies. Just like there's countless Gabriels, and Gabe is courage. Like he's all about guidance and courage. So I feel like some Michaels are angels of God and some are fallen angels. And it depends on what you get wrapped up in. And I feel like sometimes it's your intention of why you're asking for the assistance of these angels or why you're dealing with these angels may depend on what you're getting and how high your frequency is when you tap into that. Because their frequency is so high, and we think that they're going to lower themselves somewhat to try and meet you in the middle. But if we're all the way down here, and they're all the way up here, it's really difficult to meet in the middle. So you're not going to get an angel of God. You're going to get a fallen angel because they're already down here. But it's going to feel the same. And the difference is that the cycle that begins to happen is an angel of God wants you to be happy and love and worship God and worship creation and just be happy. Like they want the best for you and for everyone around you. A fallen angel is looking for you to adore them and depend on them. So it's like almost being in a relationship with a narcissist. Mm-hmm. And the fallen angel will often have a demonic with it that creates issues so that the fallen angel can come and save you. So then you're more attached to them, and it's a cycle that just keeps happening. Yeah. Whereas like Gabe, I don't generally deal with the same thing twice. And if I do, there's a lot that goes into whether or not I'm dealing with the same type of energetic again. But I feel like demons are the same thing. Like there's Beelzebub is a type of demon. So it's not like there's only one. And when we see him, that's what we're dealing with, is that one. It's not, I don't feel like it's like that.
Yeah, human beings are really good at compartmentalizing. So you're just like, it's shorthand for what you think you're dealing with kind of deal.
Yeah.
So I think that makes sense to me. And like, again, that whole like the spirit, or I guess I don't have a better word for it than spirit world. You know, I mean, the other frequency you can tap into is this menagerie of beings, and you're just like, okay, like this is the best descriptor we have of this. And like when you're saying there's like different Michaels, you're like, okay, it's just like a class of people. Then they got their own problems, they got their own things they want to do, and you're just like, hey, can you help me out?
Yeah.
And they're just like, sure, I guess, you know.
Yeah. Well, and that's just like when I first start working with a client, I try to talk to them about our terms. Like, what are we talking about? Like, a ghost is a person who died and hasn't left this plane. Can an animal become a ghost? Not really, because they're not afraid of going to hell. They know that they're part of the all that is. They're a lot cleaner than we are. So most animals, if you see them, it's because they're bouncing back and forth and they want you to see them. So, and then knowing what a spirit is, and a spirit is not everything. A spirit is a person who has crossed over. And then calling a demon is something that feeds off of negative emotions. And what is this and what is that? And if you create that baseline, that's a lot easier. So a lot of people have been using the word medium to mean anybody who reads. And I'm old. So as I was coming up, a medium was somebody who speaks to either ghosts or spirits or both. So they were 3 different kinds of mediums. Now people act like a medium is like everything. Like they'll be like, are you a medium? I'm like, are you asking if I talk to dead people?
Yeah, that's what I always assumed
Yeah.
a medium was, is if you talk to spirits or dead people. Yeah.
So,
well, while we're in the definition game,
mm-hmm.
So let's say, because you mentioned hell earlier, right? Mm-hmm. So I understand people like cross over and they go into the light, and there's that fear of they're going to go to hell or whatever. So we'll put that to the side. So when we cross over into the light, it's like when you said like that's when you can kind of like expand and be another spiritual being, or like
you're rejoining with source. So you're part of source again. So you could tap into everything.
So the reverse, if it's the reverse of that, mm-hmm. What would hell end up? What's the definition of that then, rather than?
It would be the underworld, being secluded, being cold, unloved, feeling misery. And I had a friend who was in a car accident when he was 16. And he feels like he went to hell at one point. He broke his neck. There were 4 of them in the car. He was in the back with another guy. The 2 in the front, the guy who was driving just decided to drive into a wall, like as fast as he'd go, and just drove directly into a brick wall and killed the 2 in front immediately. My friend broke his neck. And my friend said he was dead for, I don't know how many minutes they said. He should not have been revived with all of his faculties. It was long enough that it was that. And he said that he felt very cold. Everything was very black. And he could feel on one side of him, he felt like it was Satan. And the other side of him, he felt like it was Jesus, because there was light on one side and it was kind of warm. And the other side was really cold and wet and damp. And they were arguing over who was going to take him. And he said that Jesus decided he needed to go back, and he didn't want to go back. And of course, you get back, you're 16 years old, and now you're a quadriplegic. That's what he remembers. He remembers them fighting over him. And finally, Jesus saying, well, he's got more life to live. Let's give him a second chance. And boom. And then all of a sudden he was back in his body. So he ended up like going to schools to talk before prom and about drinking and driving, and tell me, he goes, if I stop one kid from this happening to them, it was worth it. And he did that for years, and he lived a lot longer. When you're a quadriplegic, your life expectancy is not good, but he lived like twice as long as he was supposed to. I think he lived till he was like 38, which is really long in that condition. Mm-hmm. But he would go every year to all the schools and would talk to people in his wheelchair and explain to them what happened to him and what a stupid decision it was. And the 4th kid in the car, he had just broken his leg. He got out of it with a broken leg. and was complaining to my friend about not being able to dance that weekend, not be able to go to a party and dance that weekend. And then a couple weeks later, that kid died in a drinking and driving accident.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like, how stupid could you possibly be? You know? Learn nothing. Two of his closest friends died. Third is in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. You broke your leg and you're like, hey, I'm invincible. No.
Tale as old as time, right?
Yeah.
So if I understand going to a doc, going to rejoining the source and all that kind of stuff, and that's kind of where you get, and I understand why that exists, but why would a hell exist in this whole, like, the machinations of it all kind of deal, you know?
Because we created that. I love Lucifer, the TV show.
Mm-hmm. I only watched a couple episodes, but
so he describes hell as being people go to hell and they keep experiencing something that they regret until they figure it out, how to forgive themselves or how to do it differently. So that's basically what we do. We are creating it in and of ourselves. We're making that happen. And then there is redemption. It's not like, I don't feel like you're there forever. Otherwise it'd be really, 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 really full at this point.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like we put ourselves there.
So it's something that human beings have created, and it didn't. Well, I guess we'll never know. I'm just being like, hey,
it's like our consciousness. It's part of our consciousness. As you could say, it's human beings, or you could just say it's life itself, because there are other intelligent species in the cosmos. And I feel like the underworld that's something that if you look at different world religions and different mythologies and everything, the underworld is there all the time. And you can look at that forms, you could look at it as the subconscious, like we get stuck in our own rut. Some people call it the waiting room. Now I've seen it called that, and purgatory and hell and all that kind of stuff. But it's about not being spiritually awake.
I enjoy that definition of that, oddly, where, you know, if you're not living a rich, full life with like love and all this kind of stuff, you're going to not that you're going to go experience something like, I think, but like it's kind of like just a tale of warning, but not like the traditional, like, you know, Christian hell or anything like that, you know? So I kind of like that whole, like, hey, if you don't live this kind of life, like, this is kind of, you're going to be lonely as fuck.
Did you ever watch What Dreams May Come?
I absolutely love that movie. And it's one of those ones that I can't really watch without like sobbing.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
That one and Big Fish. No.
I feel like What Dreams May Come is a good depiction of that, of how other souls try to help you get out of that and not keep torturing yourself. I feel like that's a pretty neat conception of it.
I'll have to revisit and be like, all right, here we go, and just get ready for the emotional onslaught of all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a really good one. Last night I watched this thing called, a movie called, Deliverance. Called Deliverance. I think it was done in 22 or 23. And it's based on a true story.
A woman with
3 kids, and she moves into a new house. Meryl Streep's in it.
Well,
she plays the grandmother. She's such an amazing actress. Oh my God. But all the actresses in it were really good. I think Monique's in it. You know Monique?
Yeah.
I love her. So she was in it, and it was very well done. It got a little schlocky towards the end, but the beginning of it and how they show the progression of what happens and how this little boy gets taken was so dead on. And that, you know, like the mother was an alcoholic. That's kind of what woke it up in the house. And there's all this trauma, and, you know, these different things start happening. And only the grandmother is realizing there's something going on here. And it was really interesting. I enjoyed it. Like I said, the end was kind of schlocky, but you kind of have to do that to get the eyeballs, because people are like, oh, it's too long to get anywhere.
Yeah, that's all right.
14-second
attention span.
Yeah.
No. Well, Geralyn, this was an incredible conversation. I'd love to have you back on some point, and we could talk more about some more, because I'm sure with 50 exorcisms under your belt and a whole bunch of other stuff, I feel like we basically scratched the surface with all this stuff. I thought I thought this was a lot of fun, and I liked talking to you and hearing all your stories and stuff like that. So
And
is there a place people can see your your YouTube channel?
YouTube channel at Geralyn St. Joseph. Geralyn is with a Geralyn
I'll post it down where
Joseph.
we put it. Yeah.
And I do have books on Amazon. I'm trying to think how many. I think I might have 6, but I have 2 that are paranormal activity. I have What Are You Dealing With? And I have Psychic Self-Defense for every day, for everyone, why you need it and what it is. And that'll give you a lot of good tips on what to do for if you get involved with anything, if you think there's an attachment, things like that. I do recommend that if anyone were to feel like something was going on, that you investigate it a little bit before you go headlong into something, because sometimes you could really make things angry. And when you make them angry, it could become exponentially worse. And if you don't have a connection of someone to be able to talk to help you with that, then, you could be up the creek and it can be devastating. And no one wants that. No one wants that.
Yeah. Well, and they don't want to have to call somebody like you, because that's when you're just like, ugh.
That's when things are bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So also I have a website, GeralynStJoseph.com. I have a bunch of websites. Just Google me. I'm everywhere.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you very much. As like I said, this is great. And hopefully you help all these people and the next exorcism goes well.
Thank you. Now, once we get off, do you want me to clear your space real quick since you know?
Yeah, sure.
Feel that?
Yeah, we can do that. Let me I'll stop the recording and we'll do that.
All right. Sounds like a plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.